Sanguinius, also known as the Angel, was the Primarch of the 9th Legion of the Legione Astartes, the Blood Angels. Sanguinius was one of the most highly regarded and revered of all the Primarchs, being seen as a figure of inspiration, beauty and awe by the common citizenry of the Imperium, despite or perhaps even because of the mutation Sanguinius bore, which gifted the Primarch a pair of large angelic wings. It's unclear whether these wings were an intentional design on the part of the Emperor himself, or if they were a result of the Primarch's journey through the warp, or even due to his infancy upon the highly irradiated world of Bile, which was known for its high mutant population density. In addition for being admired for his beauty and charisma, Sanguinius was also rightly praised as being one of the mightiest and most skillful warriors of the Imperium. This proficiency at arms was so great that even Leman Russ, the boastful and proud Primarch of the Space Wolves Legion, would admit that Sanguinius would be one of the only 2 Primarchs that not even the Wolf King would be able to defeat in single combat. During the events of the Horus heresy, Sanguinius would become crowned as the ruling figurehead of Imperium Secundus, a contingency plan enacted by the Primarch of the Ultramarines Legion, Rabute Guilliman, to preserve as much of their father's empire as possible. While Sanguinius would reluctantly accept the responsibility of becoming the de facto ruler of this new empire, Sanguinius refused to accept the title of Emperor, and instead would allow himself to be known by the title of Emperor Regent. Sanguinius and his legion would eventually make their way to Terra, where they would fight in the defense of the Imperial Palace, alongside Jagatai Khan of the White Scars and Rogel Dawn of the Imperial Fists. Sanguinius would follow the Emperor of Mankind as he launched a final assault upon the Vengeful Spirit, the flagship of the traitorous Warmaster, in order to slay Horus and end the heresy once and for all. The Emperor's forces would become separated during teleportation, and Sanguinius would locate Horus first. The 2 Primarchs would battle fiercely against one another, but Sanguinius would eventually be overwhelmed and slain by the Warmaster. The death of Sanguinius resulted in a mass psychic backlash throughout the warriors of his legion, causing the Blood Angels to temporarily become a ravening horde of berserkers who launched a brutal and savage counterattack against the traitor legions. From this point on, this psychic death scream emitted by the Primarch would begin manifesting within certain battle brothers of the Blood Angels and their future successor chapters, becoming one of the 2 genetic flaws within their gene seed, known as the Black Rage. Ever since that day, the Angel became revered and even worshipped as a saint within the Imperium. Temples dedicated to the Primarch would be constructed alongside those dedicated to his father, the Emperor. In addition, the Primarch's sacrifice would even become commemorated annually on a holy day of celebration called the Sanguinala, when citizens throughout the Imperium wear a red badge dedicated to Sanguinius upon their chest as a symbol of remembrance and respect. Sanguinius's body would be laid to rest upon his adoptive homeworld of Bile, in a great sepulchral structure known as the Golden Sarcophagus. But will Sanguinius himself forever remain in a state of death, or could the Angel be one day reborn? One method that is certainly feasible, though not one the Blood Angels themselves would necessarily permit if circumstances allowed it, would be that of creating a clone of the Primarch. In this regard, however, there is seemingly only one individual within the entire galaxy that has not only the knowledge, but also the experience and resources to perform such an act: Fabius Bile. Fabius Bile, the former chief apothecary of the Emperor's Children Traitor Legion, is infamous for his experimentation and knowledge of the Primarch genome, having succeeded in creating perfect clones of several of the Primarchs. These successful clones include multiple incarnations of the Iron Hands Primarch Ferrus Manus, which would all be butchered by the demon Primarch Fulgrim in his anger and frustration, a clone of the Sons of Horus Primarch Horus Lupercal, which would be slain by Abaddon the Despoiler, and a clone of Fulgrim, which would be gifted to the Necron Lord Trazyn the Infinite in exchange for a stockpile of pure and untainted Emperor's Children gene seed. Fabius Bile had also managed to obtain a sample of Sanguinius's blood from the Blood Angel's artifact known as the Red Grail, thanks to the actions of the apothecary known as Casus. While the vial containing the blood of Sanguinius would be reacquired by the Blood Angel's Sergeant Raphan, Fabius Bile would state that he already obtained the knowledge necessary from it and thus no longer needed it, as detailed with the following quote from the novel Black Tide.
Pathetic. Look at you, giving up your life for a few drops of liquid. It is worth so much to you, isn't it? And yet, you do not understand the potentiality of it. Take it. Take it and pray over it for as long as your life lasts, but know that your precious Sanguinius will not save you, nor will your silent, absent Emperor. I kept that relic only as a seed for the collection I will rebuild once I leave this place. But in truth it has no value to me. All the data I gleaned from that vitae is in here. I have no need of it. It is useless.
While this incarnation of Fabius Bile would be slain shortly thereafter, it's worth noting that Bile's knowledge and consciousness is constantly being transmitted and uploaded into a series of databases where this engrammatic data would then be transferred into one of the apothecary's many cloned bodies upon his death, effectively resurrecting him and allowing Bile to retain any information he would have gleaned from the Primarch's blood. This means, at least theoretically, that Bile could very well choose to clone Sanguinius. The main problem with Bile doing this, however, is that the clones of the Primarchs are shown to retain their memories, at least to a varying degree. The clone of Horus, for example, would be flooded by memories of Abaddon after laying eyes upon him, and this moment of remembrance would in turn lead to the clone's death, as Abaddon took advantage of such an opportunity. The clones of Ferrus Manus would also remember the events prior to the Horus heresy, evident with the conversations between these successive clones and Fulgrim over a game of regicide. As detailed within the story Imperfect, when Fulgrim would attempt to convince each consecutive clone to join him in rebelling against the Emperor, this would result in every clone turning aggressive towards the Emperor's Children Primarch. As such, a clone of Sanguinius could very well turn extremely aggressive towards its creator unless Bile was able to instill a measure of control over it, perhaps with some sort of biological or technological failsafe mechanism implanted within them. However, there is always the possibility that the clone of Sanguinius could very well form an emotional bond with Fabius Bile, similar to how the clone of Fulgrim grew to essentially view the apothecary as his father. Though admittedly, this particular example may be due more to Bile and Fulgrim having a, for lack of a better term, blood bond, due to Bile having gene seed derived from Fulgrim's genetic template. But there is indeed one being who may very well be able to return Sanguinius to the world of the living, not through the act of simply cloning a replica of the Primarch, but by genuinely resurrecting him. Yvraine, the emissary of the nascent Eldari god of the dead, Inyad. Yvraine has demonstrated on multiple occasions the ability to revive the dead, not by simply reanimating a corpse through the use of something akin to necromancy, but by restoring the dead back to true life. One instance, as detailed within the book Fracture of Biel-Tarn, was when Yvraine resurrected the Corsair known as Prince Iriel, after Iriel had been slain by the demon prince of Nurgle known as Garagulgulgor during the Battle of Yanden. Following the aftermath of the battle, Yvraine would utilize Iriel's weapon, the Spear of Twilight, now revealed to be the fourth of the 5 legendary Crone Swords, to restore Iriel to life by plunging the spear into his chest, simultaneously purifying his body of the Nurglite corruption left by Garagulgulgor in the process. Admittedly, there is always the possibility that Iriel's resurrection may be due in part to the powers of the Crone Sword itself, rather than as a result of Yvraine's own abilities, though one cannot entirely dismiss the possibility that Yvraine used the Spear of Twilight to, in essence, channel her powers through it. Despite this, Yvraine has also shown that her abilities in resurrection and restoration are not limited to just other members of her species. During the battle within the Webway, between the Inari and the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion, Yvraine would enact a desperate gamble by demonstrating her powers of restoration to the Thousand Suns Sorcerer, Azek Ahriman. By focusing her power, she would reverse the curse of the rubric upon a small group of Thousand Sun legionaries, restoring their bodies and consciousness to a state prior to when the spell known as the rubric was cast. Ahriman would become overwhelmed with shock, elation and grief seeing his battle brothers being restored to life. Before Ahriman could fully come to terms with the resurrection of his fellow legionaries, the Incarnate, the Avatar of Vineyard, would slay them, much to Ahriman's sorrow and anger. Yvraine would simply respond with the following.
The Whispering God gives new life, just as he takes life away.
However, while she has shown success in resurrecting fallen Eldari, as well as warriors of the Legione Astartes, restoring an exceptionally powerful being to life such as a Primarch may potentially be too much for even Yvraine's own impressive abilities, although admittedly not necessarily impossible. When Yvraine participated with the resurrection of the Primarch of the Ultramarines Legion, Rabute Guilliman, Guilliman was, for a time, bound within a unique set of armour crafted by the Archmagus Dominus of the Adeptus Mechanicus, Belisarius Cawl, known as the Armour of Fate, which acted as a life support system for the injured Primarch. Over time, however, Guilliman has been shown to be able to remove this armour, now fully recovered from the physical injuries inflicted upon him by his treasonous brother Fulgrim. Since Yvraine and her Inari faction are on amicable terms with the Imperium, due to not only the Xenos' aid in restoring one of the Emperor's sons to life, but by also sharing a common enemy in the forces of chaos, then it isn't entirely outside the realm of possibility that Yvraine herself could travel to Bile with the purpose of restoring Sanguinius to life. In this regard, perhaps Yvraine would travel to the Blood Angel's homeworld with the intention of having a newly resurrected Sanguinius overseeing what would become known to humanity as Imperium Nihilus, thanks to the advent of the gargantuan warp tear known as the Cicatrix Maledictum, effectively splitting the galaxy in two. However, should this occur, then it's possible that Sanguinius may also require a suit of armour similar to the Armour of Fate that can help heal the Primarch of the physical injuries inflicted upon him during his final battle against Horus. But one unseen and important factor remains: the soul. Yvraine was able to restore Iriel to life because his soul, like all Eldari of the Craftworlds and Corsair fleets, was captured within a Spirit Stone, and the rubric Marines of the Thousand Suns Legion, while little more than lifeless automata, still retained their souls as they were magically bound within their armour. With Sanguinius, it appears that his soul, or at least a portion of it, still lingers in the very place his life was ended, upon the Vengeful Spirit. Within the novel Talon of Horus, remnants of the souls belonging to those loyalists who perished during the final assault upon the Vengeful Spirit appear to be confined within it, taking the form of crystalline statues. These statues were able to manifest themselves thanks to the excessive warp energy that saturates the hull of the ship. The Thousand Sun Sorcerer, Iskandar Khayon, notes the following about these particular statues as he examines them.
I ran my gloved fingers down one of the visages, almost expecting its eyes to open and the song to rise from the glass mouth. These statues held life of a kind. A dull presence drifted behind their closed eyes, not entirely dissimilar to the weak life within my rubricae, but not quite the same. As I examined the crystal tongue, then the closed crystal eyes, I realized why the feeling was so familiar. It was the same spreading faintness of a soul leaving its fresh corpse in the maddening seconds before the gods pulled it into the warp.
One of these particular statues that began to appear upon the ship was none other than that of Sanguinius himself, which would be detailed within the novel Black Legion. The statue would frequently manifest itself throughout the ship, and whenever it was destroyed, it would always regenerate, though not necessarily in the same place it was shattered. Some members of Abaddon's Black Legion would see the reappearance of this crystal Sanguinius as an ill omen, while others would fail to pay it any heed save for taking idle swings at it with their weapons out of spite or boredom. The fact that Khayon recognizes the similarities between these statues and the rubric marines of the Thousand Suns would seem to indicate that the entirety, or at the very least, a substantial fragment of Sanguinius' soul is seemingly forever trapped within the Vengeful Spirit, which would seem to imply that returning it to the Primarch's body would be an apparently impossible task. That being said, however, the fact that these statues were described as having the same faintness of a soul leaving a freshly deceased body could seem to indicate that these soul statues are little more than psychic echoes that have, in effect, crystallized. The possibility of this crystal Sanguinius being little more than a psychic echo is seemingly supported within the events of the novel Devastation of Bile, where Dante, the chapter master of the Blood Angels, would teeter upon the brink of death following his confrontation with the tyrannid organism known as the Swarm Lord. Dante would then appear to speak with Sanguinius himself, and the Primarch would praise Dante for his servitude and suffering, offering to reward the chapter master for his selfless efforts. Dante would beg for the release of death, but Sanguinius would state that he could not and would not end Dante's torment due to Dante still being needed by the Imperium. Dante would then awake from this vision, begging for the Primarch to end his life so that he may finally rest, while a sanguinary priest attempted to treat Dante's wounds. While this would certainly seem to suggest that the soul of Sanguinius is not confined, or at least not entirely bound to the Vengeful Spirit, one cannot dismiss the prospect that this particular vision of Sanguinius that Dante experienced could be little more than a lucid hallucination, which had been induced by the physical trauma and shock that Dante had endured during the course of the battle. Even Dante himself would, in private, question the veracity of his supposed encounter with his Gene Father. Even if Yvraine is unable to restore Sanguinius to life, a final option does exist in order to achieve this goal, a near mythical piece of technology known as the Proteus Protocol. This piece of forbidden technology could not only transfer the engrammatic knowledge and memory of an organic brain, but also the personality and, seemingly, even the consciousness of the user as well. One such example was demonstrated within the Eisenhorn series, when the Inquisitor Grigor Eisenhorn discovered a data crystal that housed the essence of the heretic, Pontius Glor. Eisenhorn would make a deal with Glor, offering him a new mechanical body into which the crystal containing his essence could be installed, in exchange for greater knowledge and more detailed information regarding demon hosts. Glor would later betray Eisenhorn and would murder most of the Inquisitor's retinue before escaping. Eisenhorn would later battle against Glor before shattering the Proteus crystal with his Force Sword, effectively killing Glor for good. Using one of these devices, Sanguinius could in essence be reborn and his essence installed into a new body if one were constructed for him, and due to him being able to access his original memories as well as maintaining his original personality, this would make him, in essence, the Angel Reborn. Although admittedly, resurrecting the Primarch through such means would undoubtedly be seen as a heretical act given the forbidden status of such technology within the Imperium at large. If Sanguinius did return, then one would also need to ask, what would such an event mean for those sons of Sanguinius who currently suffer from the effects of the Black Rage? That will be a topic for another time. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.